Craig Shields is his name. He's an author. He's cutting edge. Renewable Energy, Facts and Fantasies is his latest book, and I love this stuff. I just jumped right on it. Craig, thanks very much for your time. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Me too. I'm looking forward to it too. Now, I love a guest with an easy name. Your name is real easy, Craig Shields, and Shields is Shields, just very conventional and easy to say, easy to spell, so I won't have that problem, Craig.
All right.
I can tell you it's going to be a good show already because I'm not going to murder your name. But
all right, well, we're off to a good start.
Now, you're from California, aren't you, all your life?
No, actually, I was born and raised in Philadelphia, went to school back east, came out here about 30 years ago, and we decided we like it out here.
All right, terrific. From my home state here, Philadelphia, that's just great, too. And just almost everyone seems to have some Pennsylvania in their background. Every time I interview somebody, inevitably they'll tell me some connection to Pennsylvania. But your latest book, Renewable Energy, Facts and Fantasies. And I got to ask you, it's a hot topic. Why'd you tackle it? And, give me the thumbnail version. Where did you go with this book?
Well, I decided that I'm an author and a consultant in this space, and I figured this was actually my first book. I'm 56 years old, so I'm a little late in life to start writing books. But I'll tell you what, it strikes me that if we're going to have a relevant, informed conversation on the subject as important as renewable energy and the migration from fossil fuels, we need to understand a couple of things. And principally, that they're tough realities. In other words, that this is not snapping our fingers and say we just want to make this happen. They're technologic issues, they're economic issues, and they're political issues that make this an extremely difficult discussion. So I figured I would hit the streets. I would interview 25 subject matter experts across the range of those kind of disciplines, the technology, the economics, and the politics, and I would try to come up with interviews that really tell the story. So my job was really to ask good questions and let these people speak and provide some good answers.
All right. You said you were a consultant. Are you an energy consultant?
Well, I was a business/marketing strategist for 30 years.
Okay.
So I figured I would, but not in this space. I was largely working with the IBMs and Hewlett-Packards and so forth of the world in the kind of the fortune-sized IT companies for most of my adult life. And when I got into this a couple of years ago, I just decided that I wanted to deploy those skills that I had learned in terms of how do you popularize a technology. If there were ever a set of issues that need understanding and good, solid, lucid communications, it's this clean energy stuff. So I figured I would try to deploy those skills against this subject, and so that's where I went with it.
All right, and you can't be talking about energy. I mean, it's just the discussion of the century, so to speak, and where are we and where are we going to go and how are we going to do it and so forth, and it's just a hot topic. But I said to you in the pre-show interview a little bit, I'm a tough sell. I like the internal combustion engine. I mean, I think it's one of the greatest inventions of all time, and although I can see the need to find alternative ways to heat our homes and light our rooms and control our buses and our trucks and so forth. When it comes down to cars, boats, and ATVs, I can't think of a better technology than the internal combustion engine.
Right. Well, in my estimation, there are essentially two problems with that kind of speak to sustainability. One of them is the obvious thing that they run on essentially fossil fuels, of which we're running out. Not only are they choking us to death and they're horrible economic, we're borrowing $1 billion a day and sending it to what are essentially enemies to bring in oil to burn here, and then as a consequence, we're spending $250 billion a year dealing with the asthma and other kind of lung disease that it's causing. So, in my estimation, I hate to be combative with a genial host like you, but it seems to me I don't really see the attraction. And even from the other standpoint, I took apart cars, or I helped my friends with their car projects when I was much younger, and I kind of have a certain affinity for it too. But look at this. An internal combustion engine is really a very large container for explosions. It's horribly inefficient when you think of the fact that you get about 20% of the chemical energy in that gasoline is becoming kinetic energy in your wheels. It's a horribly inefficient thing that most of which, in other words, the 75-80% of which turns into heat and that type of stuff. So
right.
There are a couple of reasons I don't like it.
Right.
If you want to pick it up after the break?
I'll pick up after the break. Craig Shields is his name. Renewable Energy, Facts and Fantasies. We're going to have a good old time. We'll be back. His name is Craig Shields. He's our guest, and we're talking about fossil fuels and energy. And his new book, Renewable Energy, Facts and Fantasies, is the title of it. And Craig, where can they get the book?
Well, I would actually like to give your listeners a free copy of it if I could. If they want an electronic copy, if they want a printed copy, they should just go to Amazon and just look it up under the name of the book or my name, Craig Shields, Renewable Energy Facts and Fantasies, or my name, Craig Shields.
Okay.
If you want a free copy, though, you can go to my website, which is 2Green Energy, the number 2 greenenergy.com/radio. And you can download a free electronic copy.
Okay. All right. /radio. Okay. 2greenenergy.com/radio. All right,
Exactly.
We'll plug that. That's the free copy, electronic copy. If they want the paperback, they want the hard, they'll go to Amazon.com and get the book. All right, good. And we will keep doing that. You said a couple things. You said that, we're running out of fossil fuels. Well, we're running out of fossil fuels, but, there's more coal than we know what to do with. I mean, I don't like coal. I don't like ripping up the ground to get it. And I don't like, the polluting factors of coal after the fact, but primarily the nitrates, the sulfates, and what it does to our waters and our soil. So I have my reservations about coal, but, these new gas finds, gas burns nice and clean. It's everywhere. We've got gas. And of course we have untapped oil reserves. And while you say it's rare, there's a bunch of people out there saying that we have more in this nation within our boundaries than any nation in the world. I mean, why do we have to change, Craig?
Well, I did misspeak when I said we're running out of fossil fuels, because you're right. We have coal coming out our ears. You go to, certain places in Wyoming, you don't even have to dig for it. It's right on the surface.
Right.
So there is no question about that. And it's true that we have, that the price of natural gas based on nice new techniques like fracking is making this stuff extremely abundant. It is not particularly true that we have, in other words, when we say we have all the oil we need under South Dakota or whatever, that's kind of true. There are hydrocarbons in the form of shale oil and tar sands that can be refined into gasoline and diesel, but extracted and refined, but at terrific cost in every sense, especially environmentally. So I believe, and you made a good point about coal. In other words, the problem really is that this stuff is not sustainable. This is not good for us living on this planet. I have no doubt. I don't think anybody thinks that we're going to be burning coal and driving Hummers, 75 yeyears from now. The question really is, when exactly are we going to do this? For exactly what reasons? And I also think another extremely important question is, who's going to make a buck in the process? Because unless you answer that question, this isn't happening.
I like your candor, because that's the truth of the matter. Unless somebody's going to make a buck on it, but isn't that why we see ExxonMobil and the rest of them, digging or drilling for gas now and getting involved in these sideline technologies? They too realize that the day might be coming soon that the majority of their profits may not come from oil at all?
Yes. It's an interesting, I'm not, I guess it goes without saying that I'm not invited to the board meetings of ExxonMobil and Chevron and BP and so forth. And I can only speculate as to what they're saying. Certainly they're as concerned on a financial basis as most of us are on a kind of healthcare and kind of practicality basis and long-term environmental damage, etc. So I'm sure they have fantastically interesting conversations in those board meetings, and certainly a lot of that has to do with diversifying. I think the problem, if you're in ExxonMobil, It's funny. I've had dozens and dozens of conversations on the subject. Why don't they become energy companies? Well, they kind of say they're become. We're more beyond petroleum, as BP says. But the truth is, they have. Am I really expecting? Can anybody who understands business and core competency and the type of things people do? ExxonMobil is one of the best-run companies on Earth, and they have a core competency, and it's not building lithium-ion battery separators, as they famously say in their commercials. So, in other words, it's digging, it's extracting, it's refining, it's distributing oil, and to some degree, I would say if you're going to diversify from there and you really want to deploy those core competencies correctly, I would think geothermal is a heck of a lot closer than anything else you're going to find, because it really is about drilling.
All right. My feeling is that we run along with the oil in the areas that we don't have the technology to replace just yet. But there's lots of things I wouldn't care. It wouldn't bother me one iota if every coal-burning power plant in this nation was converted to gas, and we have that potential, to do that. There's enough gas in this nation. There's enough gas in the Northeast. A new Marcellus discovery in the Northeast. I mean, it's down 7,500 feet, 10,000 feet, but there's so much gas available, and that burns so much cleaner.
Yes, it does.
And why don't we take it industry at a time? It's society that's going to be the biggest drag in all of this, isn't it? Because I don't want to let go of my Hemi head Dodge truck. I don't want to let go of it.
Yeah.
I want to let go of my Harley Davidson. And as far as I'm concerned, I don't want to power it by any other means. I don't want to plug it in. I mean, I don't want to do those things. It's a motorcycle.
Right. Well, of course, we are kind of conflating a number of different issues, but you're absolutely right that we as a nation feel entitled to certain things, and certainly abundant and inexpensive energy is one of them. And so to some degree, when we talk about renewables, we need to keep in mind that we're trying to fix a problem that doesn't really exist in the minds of a lot of people. In other words, when we flick on the light switch, the lights come on. We don't have a reliability problem, and we don't really have a cost problem if you're spending, on average, 10 or 11 cents a kilowatt hour.
8 cents. I pay 8 cents.
There you go.
So, no, you're right. We don't really have a problem as far as it's so long range for us to conceptualize that it's hard for the average person to say, I'm not giving up my Evinrude E-Tech. I mean, that boat runs like a champ. I'm not accepting another technology for my boat.
Well, do you know what's interesting? I think it's the third interview in the book out of the 25 is with a guy who is credited with the discovery of global warming, who in 1972 correctly predicted that there would be a measurable increase in the temperature of the Earth's atmosphere by 1980.
You got to hold that thought. thought. I'm going to come back. Craig Shields, his book, Renewable Energy, Facts and Fantasies, Amazon.com, or email him and you get it for free. We'll be back. We're back. Craig Shields is his name. He's an author, a consultant, a number of things. Good guy. I'm talking to him. Good guy. Got a nice way about him. Renewable Energy, Facts and Fantasies is his new book. You can get it at Amazon.com, of course, or you can actually get a free downloadable version if you go to his website. And he's got here the number 2, greenenergy.com/radio. And it's
actually / but
okay, / You're right. I wrote a / I don't know why I said backslash, but 2 greenenergy.com /radio is a place to go. And I am enjoying your company, Craig. I like your style, but on the break I said to you, the whole thing with renewable energy and oil and our dependencies and world politics and all these incredible things. I mean, I think we need to make the conversion for an entirely different reason than a lot of them that are thrown around. And my feeling is we need to make the conversions in all the areas as soon as we can, because it's just the right thing to do. We should be using the most efficient methods, the least expensive, try to protect the earth. We don't want to pollute the oceans, the rivers, and this deposition, these nitrates, sulfates from burning coal drive me crazy. It destroys everything. And that I don't really need the global warming excuse or climate change excuse to move me. We need to do the right thing. I got an old quote there. You want to know the intellect of a nation. Test their water quality, and you could say test their air quality, because doesn't it determine our intellect if we're running around trying to make a buck, but we're killing ourselves in the process?
I completely agree, and it's interesting. You've put it in a way that I don't think I've heard anybody say, and that means something, considering I do these radio shows all the time, and I have hundreds and hundreds of people writing me all the time. But when you say we need to do it because it's the right thing, that to me creates the question: well, what do you mean by the right thing? Why would something be the right thing? And when you say, for instance, it should be the most efficient and least expensive, etc., the problem, it seems to me, is that there is no one solution that's all of these things at the same time. We're trying to hit a moving target here. Mm-hmm. We're trying to say, okay, the cost of wind is very, very close to grid parity. In other words, it's close to the cost of coal, especially dirty coal. And if you want clean coal, it's already there. Mm-hmm. My point is that so here we have the constant decline in the cost of renewables. Photovoltaics is only a few years behind, it seems to me, and there are dozens, as you're aware, there are dozens of other flavors of this, of biomass and hydrokinetics and geothermal and so forth. There's some fantastic ideas that are under development. The costs are coming down. The cost of fossil fuels, by the way, it is true that we're going to make discoveries and we're going to find new ways of, beating up the earth with fracking and so forth and hopefully nobody gets killed and, hopefully nobody's drinking water bursts into flame. And so it's a fantastically complicated calculus of all of this stuff. But the one thing that you can kind of know for sure about this planet, as the population increases, the demand for energy increases even faster, because you have all the enormous populations in China and India that are becoming kind of middle class, if you will, for the first time, and wanting to drive cars and doing things that they never did before. So unbelievable explosion in the demand for energy. One thing that is that the technology is going to get cheaper. In other words, and it's not that there isn't technology in oil extraction, but there's certainly renewables is all about technology. So that we know from our love affair with technology over the last half century that it does work. It does get better. It does get less expensive. And so I think that overall we are going to get there. We're going to, by 2050, we're going to be in a very good place with respect to renewables. And the only real question is how much damage are we going to do in the process? In other words, I want to get there now. It sounds like you do too. You're an outdoorsman. You've got a good, heart. And you want to do the right thing. I think that's laudable.
Right. Well, I know about acid rain monitoring stations set up over the country. I've watched our average rainfall, the pH of our average rainfall fall. We're down in the 4.2 area, 4.3 area, where you're supposed to be at 7. I have watched this over 20, 30 years. It's just gotten worse. I've watched the denials. Of course, the lobbyists in the industry saying no, that's not important. No, we need to keep doing what we're doing. And you said something before about clean coal. I know about bituminous coal and anthracite coal, but I don't know about clean coal. I don't think there's such a thing as clean coal. But
exactly.
It's an old industry that's heavily entrenched. It has its own, industrial complex, so to speak, and it's going to be tough to usurp them or supplant them from what they've been doing for 50 years. But I too think we're a great nation, and I think we will figure this out. We will argue like the Dickens for years, but we will figure it out. And I think people like yourself who come forward and write the books and, scream loud and clear, what the hell are we doing? I mean, I think that's part of what a great nation we are, and that's how these things move in this nation.
That's exactly right. It's the only way they move in this nation, because I'll tell you what, as you suggested, the oil industry controls the biggest lobby in the universe.
Right.
So, in other words, they are an industry. Coal is an industry. Renewables is an industry. It's a bunch of guys like me. I mean, I shouldn't say this because it's not completely true, but when you think about it, you have to be something of a boob, I think, to believe that our elected leaders are uninfluenced by these enormously powerful and numerous lobbyists. I mean, you regardless of what you think of ExxonMobil or Chevron or whatever, they're not idiots.
Right.
They're smart people, and they are getting something for all the money they're spending lobbying Congress. And what are they getting? Well, we're still subsidizing a 90-year-old industry that's extremely profitable. We're transferring wealth from you and me as taxpayers to the shareholders of these the largest corporations on earth that are already fantastically profitable. You tell me why they're doing this.
Right.
I mean, it's just completely indefensible.
Right. And after a while, it becomes an issue of profit protection. You know what I mean? Profit preservation is what happens. And, these guys are into it deep. They're making money, and they don't want to see that change. And they don't want to take any risks, and they've got the money to apply the pressure in Congress. And at the state level, you'd be surprised how powerful these energy, companies are at the state level. If your state is an oil producer or a coal producer or a gas producer, they get entrenched real quick.
Yes, absolutely right.
And they literally buy senators. They literally buy votes. They literally control the dialogue is what happens. So that's one of the fallacies of our political system, that we've allowed these people, and we've allowed that type of scenario to get this deeply entrenched. We shouldn't.
That's exactly right. And it's getting worse, unfortunately. I mean, there are people like me, and I'm not trying to hold myself up as a saint. I'm not a saint. I'm just a guy who knows what he knows, and fortunately, I'm on the right side of this issue. I mean, I really do believe in this, and I've helped a lot of fledgling companies in this space get off the ground, and I'm thankful that I've had the opportunity to do that. But I'll tell you what, this is going backwards for everybody like me, moving it forwards. These things get more and more entrenched. And I think we see this in this idiocy of this thing in our political debates as we speak. I mean, and it goes in both directions. So, for instance, somebody wants to get elected, and then, if they're successful, they are elected and they're doing their thing. But what are they doing? They're either moving immediately to the left and saying, oh, this oil and coal is horrible, we have to get rid of it this afternoon. Well, we can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Or they move immediately to the right and they say, there's nothing the matter with this. We can burn this, we can extract and rape and pillage and burn this stuff until the cows come home. Well, that's not true either. That's as idiotic. But there's no, a centrist voice of reason and calm simply doesn't exist. It can't exist there. And that's the real tragedy of this, is that we've so politicized this in front of an electorate that is completely, they can't understand this anymore. In other words, they're just being screamed at by both sides, neither of which are making any sense. That, by the way, is why I wrote the book. I figured, you know what, we are not having intelligent, refined, informed conversations on this subject. And until we at least know what we're talking about in terms of these various technologies, in terms of the economic issues, in terms of the politics, it's only going to get worse. So I figured, why not take a crack at this?
Well, the core. I'm listening very carefully. You were spot on. But the core issue here, and I think what a lot of Americans are waking up to, is that our political system doesn't always do the right thing for the people. They do the right thing for who's greasing their pockets, or what is fashionable and what is trendy and so forth. They don't figure out or are not interested in doing the right thing for the people. And if they did, we would have a whole different set of decisions coming out of Washington. That's for sure. That's
absolutely true. I was listening to the governor of Colorado talk in New York City at a meeting just a couple weeks ago, and he said, the University of Colorado at Boulder, I think it was, did an extremely comprehensive survey of voters in the state, all over the state, very, enormously statistically valid. Many tens of thousands of people surveyed from all walks of life, and they had a very, very clear mandate in terms of what they wanted.
Craig, you're going to have to hold that thought, though. When we come back, I want you to pick up right there. Craig Shields is the name. Renewable Energy, Facts and Fantasies. He's a fascinating guy in his own right. We'll be right back. I'm going to ask our guest back, is what I'm going to do. Mr. Craig Shields is his name. His latest book, Renewable Energy. His first book, Facts and Fantasies. We have just had an excellent conversation, an excellent discussion. I like his style. I like his approach. And he's a business consultant, and he felt motivated and moved by all the things that are going on with energy extraction, usage, and so forth. You could get his book at Amazon.com, or you can go get a free download if you want. The number 2, greenenergy.com and /radio, correct?
Forward slash.
/radio. And I've got a / here, and I just keep getting confused, but / radio is where to go. And you've been delightful, Craig. I want to have you back. Let's give it 2 or 3 months. You'll come back. We'll go over it again. I mean, this topic of this energy and what are we going to do for the future right now, the pending elections. I mean, this far exceeds whether the rainbow trout are taking, sulfurs or tricos or if deer populations are up or down. I mean, this is a biggie, isn't it?
Well, I believe so. I don't want to take anything away from the hunters and the fishermen of the world, but I do think that this is a biggie, and one that affects, hunting and fishing and sustainability more generally for a long time to come.
It sure does. It really does. It really does. But, all right, tell me some more, though. Just before the break, I cut you off. You were telling us a story about you were listening to the governor of Colorado, maybe?
Yes.
In New York City?
Bill Ritter. Spoke at a conference that I attended a couple weeks ago, and he told a story, a fairly recent story, about how how the University of Colorado had conducted a very comprehensive study of the voter sensibilities with respect to renewable energy. In other words, what should we do? Are we willing to pay another couple cents a kilowatt hour for clean energy? And overwhelmingly, they said yes. So this was an unbelievable mandate for these 2 senators to go back to Washington and vote in favor of clean energy legislation, which they didn't. They both went back to Washington after this break, looked at the results of the thing, said, "Thanks very much, guys," and they voted directly against it. So right. I just told you that story just to speak to what you had said in the segment before. In other words, that we cannot expect legitimacy, sincerity on the part of our elected leaders, given an atmosphere as poisonous as this. In other words, the way in which these people are elected is with big money, and until we do something about that, until we have meaningful election finance reform, which I can't imagine how we're going to get there, but until we do, we're going to be facing this problem, and it's going to be up to people like me and you and anybody else who cares to say, you know what, we have to make a change here.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, politics are minority-driven. At least that's the way they start out. They start out minority-driven, and until the issue gains some traction. But I'll admit it takes an upswell of outrage. I mean, it takes the fear and the threat of not being reelected to get a lot of these guys to move, and that is their Achilles heel, though, Craig. That is their Achilles heel, and it's tough, and it's a hell of a way to do business to call your senator and say, look, pal, if you don't straighten out here and fly right, get this taken care of, I'm going to do all I can to make sure you're on unemployment after this election.
Yes, exactly right.
And it takes that kind of pressure. Otherwise, I do some lobbying myself. I go to our state capitol. I lobby on behalf of sportsmen's issues. And it really isn't until you take your shoe off and pound it on the desk and literally, get in someone's space that you begin to gain their attention. If you sit there, tail between your legs and hands folded in the middle of your lap, and you have a nice civil conversation, they shake your hand and tell you, I'll get back to you, and then they do nothing.
Yes.
They do nothing. The only thing that moves them is that I'll be in your district next month working for your defeat.
That's great.
This is what it takes.
That is the type of rancor that we need. For better or for worse, to be honest with you, I don't bring that level of rancor to the table. I am concerned that we're not going in the right direction. The book itself, I wouldn't want people to buy the book thinking that it's going to be rancorous, because it's not really. Mm-hmm. In fact, it's the precise opposite. It's the most level-headed kind of objective set of people and interviews and
civil,
topics,
civil discourse, civil discourse, and so forth.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes.
But in the real world, sometimes that doesn't work. I mean, and to be honest,
you're absolutely right. But
right.
I guess my point is that until people really understand the facts, in other words, pounding on the desk is one thing. Pounding on it and saying something that's cogent and that is fact based.
Right.
All things being equal, will probably take you further.
Right. No, that's right. That is correct. Well, that's where the passion comes in, and that's where the supporting science come in. When you have irrefutable, supporting science, and you have your facts in order, and then you have the passion on top of it to convey it, and of course you're articulate and you put your words together nicely. It's tough for that politician to just totally ignore you. When you come in as a wishful thinker and an endless optimist, and you don't have your facts in order. Hey, I'll get back to you on that one. Let me check into that. So, but go ahead. I want you got 3 minutes here, 4 minutes here to go. I sense an optimistic guy and Mr. Craig Shields, and go ahead, pontificate for me. You said before maybe by 2050, but how do we get there? We're 40 years away. 39 years away from 2050. What are the transition? What are the key talking points? How are we going to do this?
Well, what I really think, being a pragmatist, so first of all, understanding the technologic issues, understanding the fact that we are making progress with these technologies, every single one of them, and the cost is coming down, making this thing pretty much a no-brainer. At a certain point, you're going to be faced with a conversation that goes like this. Look, an incremental megawatt of energy is needed in District X. We can either do it with coal or we can do it with wind or photovoltaics. What do you want to do? Well, that's going to be a pretty close to a no-brainer. I don't think anybody, or you can be from a coal state from hell, and I don't think anybody is you're going to run into an argument there, it seems to me. But, I don't know that the environmental issues are as powerful as the jobs issues, and especially with what we've been through here. The truth is that this is going to put millions and millions of people back to work. Mm-hmm. We need an uncountable. I shouldn't say uncountable because it's more than countable. As a matter of fact, I'm working on my next book where it's really all about job creation. It's understanding the macroeconomic issues of what is the world going to be like? What are we really going to do in terms of green collar and white collar jobs? I mean, the build out of our electric grid. That is going to require not only electrical work but electronics, enormous amounts. You've heard of smart grid, obviously.
Sure.
That is an unbelievable. That's what is being called the third industrial revolution. Mm-hmm. So this is the ultimate. Win. It's a win for everybody except for the oil companies, it seems to me, and the coal companies. I mean, there are going to be people who lose in this thing, but when you think about the 7 billion people on Earth and the 300 million people in the United States, and the fact that we have unemployment coming out our ears, and we're struggling to get through this recession, and you're faced with something that is going to put millions and millions of people back to work in meaningful, productive capacities. I think we're going to get there, but I think to answer your excellent question, in other words, how would you frame this if you were presenting this to Congress this afternoon, and saying, okay, well, what you get 15 seconds on the subject, pal. What are you going to tell us?
Right.
I would say frame it in terms of jobs. Frame it in terms of the fact that the United States, in the words of General Patton, loves a winner and will not tolerate a loser. And
right.
We're becoming losers in this. We're falling behind the rest of the world. We have people out of work. We just need to see past the politics and the rhetoric and the enormous power of these lobbies and say, bull. We've had enough of this. We've heard enough of this. It's time to cut this out. Do the right thing, put these people back to work, and go in the right direction.
All right, couple thoughts I want to bounce off you. First one is, when I listen to you about the job creation and the potential here and our future, you do sound like an ExxonMobil commercial. If you've seen their commercials on TV, they're institutional commercials, and they're showing pictures of, what goes on, 2 miles below the earth. It's going to blossom on top of the earth and create all these new jobs. And
yes,
that's the point they make.
It's Orwellian. It's like saying,
Right.
you're the Ministry of Peace when you're building bombs.
Right.
It's a complete lie. It's brilliant. I'm a marketing, I'm a PR guy, and my hat's off to them in terms of efficacy. I suppose that's what I would be doing and saying too if I had the job. I'm very glad I don't. But I mean, they're good at what they do, but
Right.
that's simply untrue. And I would simply call upon your listeners to just get the facts in front of them and make the decision for themselves.
Well, here's one other thought for you, Craig, and I've seen this before in all forms of businesses, all sorts of forms of government rules and regulations. But is it conceivable that we are in the period of delay tactics, whereas government realizes the impact on profits and stockholders and the transition that these energy companies have to go through, and this is like going out to see the pitcher while the new pitcher is warming up. You're buying time. Could we be in that period that government is buying time for these energy companies to reverse their trend and reverse their direction so that they remain profitable? And you got 5 seconds to answer that question.
Well, if what you're saying is this an election, they're doing this because it's an election year, look, it's always an election
Right.
year, okay?
I want you back in a month or so. We're going to talk again, okay?
Sounds good. I'll be happy to do it.
All right. Thanks for doing the show, and I want to thank everybody for listening. Once again, dedicate the show to my father, as I always do. God bless him. His hunting and fishing plans always included me. Hey, see you then.